Come on in to the Successful Mind podcast and learn how to identify people that don't necessarily have your best interest at heart. See you inside. As you probably can tell, a lot of the content that I create usually is kind of relative to things that I'm picking up in our coaching business, when I'm going out and speaking, that type of thing. And right now, one of the things that is happening a lot, that I'm getting a lot of feedback on, a lot of questions around, is people that show up as kind of different individual, toxic, and other people are taken by surprise by it. So let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about. You have an engagement with somebody. Could be an employee, could be somebody you're working with, could be a business partner, could be a lover, could be basically anybody. And you're in a relationship with this person for a certain period of time, and all of a sudden it's like you wake up one day and you see that you're with a monster, so to speak. In other words, somebody has misrepresented themselves, and you're like, where did this person come from? I have no idea. I'm in this fucked up situation. It's like I'm waking up in the middle of a goddamn nightmare. And what do I do about it? And not only does this generally happen once, but when you see this happen with somebody, you'll find out that it's a repeat problem in their life. And they're not really understanding a very basic premise about human nature, and that is when you see somebody do something once, there's a very good chance they're going to do it again. Most people are not like being 100% aware of their behavior. And what I mean by 100% aware of their behavior, like they're not really practicing principles of mindfulness. They're not practicing principles of self-improvement. They're not trying to make themselves better. They're just kind of going through their life and showing up as they show up. So people will reveal their character pretty much like frequently. Like you will frequently see truths of their character come out. Now, when this happens, often if a person does not like that piece of their character, they will try to hide it. And when they try to hide it, they don't want anybody to know that, maybe they're an angry person or a toxic person or an abusive person or a thief or they're conning the world, or they think they're conning the world. Aware people see individuals that show up inauthentically a mile away. Like I remember my mentor said to me one time, you can't hide anything from an aware person, because an aware person, and it's not so much that they studied other people, they studied themselves. So this is it's a really great, and I'll mention a resource on this that everybody can go pick up when they're done listening to this. It's a fantastic resource to really look at yourself, like hold up a real mirror to yourself with the idea of growing, not with the idea of trying to hide it anymore. Because the more you try to hide it, the worse that it actually is. So I had done another episode, and I had talked about Robert Greene and the laws of human nature. And I was, I'm still kind of flitting through the book a little bit, pulling out nuggets and stuff. And I had already decided that I was going to do an episode on this concept. So this concept is a rule that I have for life. It's something that I teach people. And it allows you to be very discerning about how you bring people into your life. And here's what it is. That's what I opened the show with. When someone shows you who they are the first time, believe them. Or when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Meaning that when somebody has a break in character and you witness a break in character, you need to believe it, because it's not an accident. It's not something that is caught off guard. It is something that they're hiding. And for some reason, situational, it probably got jarred out and it was brought to the surface. So here's what Robert Greene had to say about it. He says, you see their actions not as isolated incidents, but as part of compulsive patterns. If you ignore the pattern, it's your own fault. You must always keep in mind the primary corollary of this law. People never do something just once. They might try to excuse themselves, to say they lost their heads in the moment, but you can be sure that they will repeat whatever foolishness they did on another occasion, compelled by their character of habits. In fact, they will often repeat actions when it's completely against their self-interest, revealing the compulsive nature of their weakness. So why do we need to learn this? Well, because I think that people very much go through life actually being victims of themselves, but they don't know it. They don't realize it. In working with a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, I hear the horror stories almost on a regular basis of people on their team, people they went in business with, employees, people that they meet that are contemporaries, in their whatever field that they're in. And it's not just with business people. I mean, we hear it all through life. Brandon and Steph have told me stories back in the days when they were teachers, of the horror of seeing some of the truth of these teachers behind closed doors versus the person that they actually presented in the classroom, or the person that they presented to students' parents, like in parent-teacher conferences or something. And then, they'd be all great about some kid, and then behind closed doors in the lunchroom, they're ripping this kid apart. We see these breaches in character all the time. And we seem to be also, on the flip side of this, we seem to be very surprised by a breach of character once we've known somebody. So the question then says, well, did something happen in this person's life to breach their character, or is it something I'm missing? And I'm here to tell you, in 99.9% of the cases, it's something that you're missing. There's another saying that crisis brings out the character of an individual. Meaning that in times of extreme emotion or extreme pain or extreme crisis, trauma, when something goes wrong in a person's life, what it does is it shuts off the conscious thinking of an individual who's walking around masking who they are, and it causes them to go into complete reactive mode, and then that comes out of them. And if there are flaws in a person's character, generally those flaws are going to come to the surface. People in some of the work that we've done on the podcast and other things around abusive people, we've talked about this pretty extensively. When you get involved with somebody and you think it's a great relationship, anywhere from a romantic relationship to a business relationship to a friendship, even social relationships. And in the beginning, it's fantastic. This person is great. We're excited to be friends with them. You're going along over a period of time. And then slowly, as you're with this person, you start to find out that this person's actually a toxic individual. The behavior starts to come out, circumstances start to happen, situations, the way that they respond, the way that they don't respond. And we do something that I think is very interesting with this. We generally make excuses for people. Now, I will preface. Thank you. Preface. I will preface this by saying this. Yes, I think that there are definitely occasions where all of a sudden we'll recognize something in our character and go, holy shit, where did that come from? But if we're on a path in life where it's I want to better myself, we recognize that, we apologize to anybody that it affected, and then we're like, okay, I need to work on this. I need to figure out where the hell that came from. I've had several instances in my life where that has happened, to realize that somehow or another, something from my childhood got dug up that I didn't even realize was there. And I had to go back in and really do some introspection and work on changing it. So everybody has that to some degree. I'm talking about the people that have no plan on changing anything. And their whole idea is to deceive, to really go out there and deceive. We hear the horror stories of it on a grand scale, like with somebody like Jeffrey Epstein, right? Who basically had a pyramid scheme for abusing underage girls in his life and then providing that to people all over the world. When they uncovered that, they were astounded. They were absolutely astounded how many hundreds and thousands of people this guy had actually been using. A matter of fact, Netflix has a documentary on it. If you haven't seen it, you should go take a look at it from a couple of different perspectives. one of the interesting things about that documentary with him was that as you in the beginning of it, they talk about two major things that are huge red flags for this guy. One is how elusive he is, right? So the guy's like a billionaire. He's got visual wealth in many places of the world, like big houses, several airplanes, helicopters, the whole thing. Nothing wrong with that. But nobody knew how he made his money. And he was very elusive about how he made his money. Like, people knew of him. It seemed like everybody knew him or knew of him, but nobody knew how he made his money. And he was very secretive. Like, nobody knew what he was doing, yet he seemed to work in circles where he was with the elite of the world. And people wanted to be around him, but they really didn't know what he was doing. Big red flag, right? So that, that's kind of a question of, why does somebody want to be around a person like this? Like, what is the draw? What is the attraction to being around this person? Well, he's extremely charismatic. He was also a total narcissist, right? Narcissists are extremely charismatic. You're drawn into them. And I'm going to get to the reason that we're drawn into them in a minute. But the idea is that we're drawn into people like this that are very charismatic. And by the way, it doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor, right? It just so happened that was a circumstance that this guy was in. Now, I will say that his wealth helped him hide what he was doing for a long time and made it much easier for him to do the sexual abuse that he was doing. But the other flag was the fact that he was so damn charismatic. And there's a part in the series where there's some very competent individuals, big, huge business owners, like really competent people that were totally sucked into this guy's personality, and will literally tell you that they were mesmerized by him just by talking to him. Now, that alone should be a huge flag. If I'm taken in that much by a person, I shouldn't be so cautious about that individual, but I should be cautious about myself. Like, what is it I don't have, or that I need so much that I'm so sucked into another individual's personal charisma or dynamic in life that I'm not actually seeing warning signs. So this is what I say. Whenever you're around somebody like that, you better check yourself first, because it doesn't mean that there's warning signs there. It means that if there are, you're probably not seeing them. So let's talk about that for a minute. Why is it that people get sucked into individuals that ruin their lives or make their lives hell so easily, and they don't see it? It usually seems like when you hear these horror stories, they happen with people that people know most of the time, right? Yes, it can happen with somebody that you don't know, you just met, whatever, and you're taken for a ride. But how is it that a person gets sucked in with these people that taken advantage of by people that they know? There is, I think, something in each one of us that really wants to belong in groups of people, really wants to belong with certain individuals that either we're impressed by, we want to be like, or we want their approval from. And the reason for this is because, early in our life, we're very much susceptible to the idea of needing approval. We have to have the approval of our parents just to live. I mean, that's a biological human fact. I mean, it's a fact for most of life, not all life, but most of life that has offspring. It has to take care of that offspring for a certain period of time. Well, with human beings, it's the longest period of time. We're the animal that has to be taken care of the longest, where if we're not, the chances of our death is very great. So this goes on for a long period of time. Being that dependent upon someone causes a vulnerability that we're actually supposed to get over as we become adults, but very few people ever do. It gets transferred then from the parent to other people in life. So we have this inherent susceptibility to a vulnerability to need the approval and the recognition and the promotion of other individuals in order to survive. That's the key that I think makes this so dangerous, because it's literally linked to our survival at some point. In some cases, it can be rational. In other cases, it's completely irrational. Where is it rational? Well, it's rational in cases where it's actually true. Our whole world was like that at one point in time, where people of authority, people of power, it was usually all the really big men at one point in time. They had control over everybody else. They were the dictators. And if you were not part of the system, part of the ideology, part of the thought process, if you stepped out of it at all, chances for death were very great. Back in caveman days, so to speak, there was survival in groups, right? So, when we were fighting tigers and bears and all that crap on a daily basis, when that was a real threat for most of humanity, or the possibility of a threat, numbers prevailed. That's how we overcame those things. It's also how we overcame hardship, right? So it kind of became ingrained in our genetics that being with other people brought us safety. And again, it's important to note how susceptible we are to this, because that's the way we're born into the world, and we're in that way for a long period of time. Without consistency from our parents and the step-by-step process of taking us from little kids into an adult and actually turning that power over to ourselves, which means that the parents have a conscious awareness to back out of that process and turn it over to the child, where they're actually self-reliant. And they understand that your parents are teaching people about different personalities that they'll run into in life, and how to draw boundaries, and how to verify individuals that they're letting into their life, how to hold people accountable, how to say yes, how to be 100% confident in your ability to say no, even if you're wrong with something. That's how a person has the conscious ability to be able to stay safe in their own life, because we all know that there is no ultimate safety. There's nothing in society that says you're safe. It's by cause and effect, and it's by the consciousness of choice. And not being safe, is basically based on ignorance, right? What you don't know, you don't know. So it could be ignorance that was indoctrinated, or it can be ignorance because I don't want to know. Either case, I become susceptible to anything that's a perpetrator or a predator if I open myself up to that vulnerability. Now, when a person's insecure, when they don't have a real sense of self, we allow and we create the perfect environment for the disordered mind to be developed. And really, when you think about the disordered mind, what we're really seeing in the idea of the way a person thinks, so that's why we've labeled it disordered, right? So it is not thinking correctly to produce a positive or a healthy result. It has a confused way of putting things together to get a result, either real or imagined, that actually the person thinks that they're safe, or they're in power, or they're in control, whatever it might be. But it's also looking at feedback very much in a distorted way. Like, for instance, with some disorders, people look at the world and they're projecting their inner pain, whatever it might be, onto their outer circumstances, but they don't know that they're really doing it. The way that they perceive the pain is that it's being caused by other people's actions. Now, that could be their husband, their wife. It could be their kids. It could be friends. It could be lovers. It could be people that they work with. It could be the government. And it gets projected. So the person, because their mind's disordered, they really believe that the pain that they're experiencing in life, or even the situation and circumstances they're experiencing in life, is being caused by other people. So they also have a tremendous need to be liked by other people, because they know that at some level they need other people in their life to be able to provide where they're actually insecure. So they have a way of manipulating. And when they manipulate, they can get you to believe that they're really a great person. You don't see these flaws up front because they put their best foot forward, like most people do in life. But they do it in a way where it becomes very disarming, right? So when we start to look at individuals and we say, oh, this person is so nice, oh, this person's a really great person, we have to ask, what are we evaluating in our mind to make that determination? Because when we do it and we become disarmed, we don't actually see like the disordered part of this individual, which makes us very susceptible to something later on. So if a person was to suck you in that had a disorder where they were projecting all their pain onto you, they probably wouldn't do it at first. They would be very charismatic. You would like them. They would pretend that they like you. They would get, as they brought you in emotionally and realized that your weakness was a need to be liked by other people, they would constantly feed you what it is that you needed to hear or what you needed to experience in the world. And then as you became more emotionally dependent upon them, they would spring this trap, and all of a sudden you would be under their psychological control. And you might think, well, that would never happen to me. Listen, this happens to more people than you could possibly count. Because if I'm going through life and I don't have a disordered mind, I'm not aware that other people think like this. So, what do I need to develop in order to protect myself from this situation is that I need to believe what I'm experiencing from other people and not defend it, not deflect it, not make excuses for it, but really look at it and go, wait a minute. Regardless of the situation, this person did this. And this is out of character for a person that I want to be around. So then you need to evaluate what this is. Is the person taking responsibility? Or is they blaming? They're shoving it under the carpet. They're trying to deny it. They're making excuses. All of that really determines whether or not you're going to continue to be in a relationship. Now, if it's something severe, in many cases, when I've worked with people that have had abuse in their life, it is very much severe. The fact that a person is going to deflect or make excuses for the severity of somebody else's actions causes a big problem. Because why are they making excuses for it? They're making excuses for it so they don't have to experience the pain of either calling this person out or walking away from the relationship. But inevitably what happens is that because of their vulnerability of being sucked into this relationship, it's going to escalate over time until it goes from just one little slight or something that seems very out of character for someone to something that's actually very damaging. And it can go all the way to the place where people have lost their entire net worth, or they've lost their lives in some cases. If they're dealing with a sociopath or something like that. So if we become aware that we're susceptible to this problem because we're experiencing people come into our life who literally start showing up out of character, like they're abusive, they're verbally abusive, they're emotionally abusive, they're condescending, they ignore when we need something, they don't take responsibility, they blame, they're victimizing, they're constantly have all this drama going on in their life. There's a lot of different signs and symptoms to seeing this. You have to develop the idea in your mind of this, that when they show you who they are, believe them the first time. That means that what you're seeing is real. You're seeing something that's real. It's part of their character. Listen, a person's not going to do something that's not in their character. Now, we've all done stupid things, so we also have to use some intelligence with this, right? There's a difference between oh shit, I shoved my foot in my mouth. I don't know why the hell I said that. That was kind of a stupid thing. Versus something that's actually mean or cruel or, with the intent of causing some kind of harm, something, that's really bizarre. Because those are the things that can end up, being very dangerous. And then, again, does the person take any responsibility for something? Because generally these people don't take responsibility. It's constantly blaming. And usually when I hear these stories that come from clients, a lot of times it's happening, it could be happening with a spouse or a lover, but a lot of times it's coming from people that are on their team. It's coming from employees. They find out an employee's stealing, or the employee's running another business on the side and they're ciphering off clients from them. I just recently had one client where they found out that this has been going on for several years, and they absolutely didn't know it. And what they were dealing with was an employee that was constantly underproducing for what they were supposed to do. The employer, the person, was making excuses for this person, never asking themselves, how was this person managing to live the lifestyle that they were living when they were not advancing any further in their work at their current job? Like, it just didn't make any sense. There were signs that were there, but the person chose to ignore those signs. And eventually they find out that the reason why they're doing it is because they're siphoning off clients from the company that they're employed with to their own private business that this person didn't even know about. And I remember when the person told me this story, the first reaction that the employer had was they felt sorry for the person because the person made all these excuses, but immediately went into a defensive position and then blamed the employer because they had gotten caught. They took absolutely no responsibility. I've had clients where there were signs of abuse in a relationship right up front. They ignored it because the feeling of attraction, the feeling of love, the possibility of love, the love bombing was there, or great sex, or a lot of money and trips and gifts and stuff like that, were pushed up right up front. The person kind of was induced, so to speak, by the lavish attention, and they did not pay attention to the fact that the person was unscrupulous. I mean, they're doing different things. They can't be held accountable for their whereabouts. They are sneaking around. They're abusive to the kids. They'll see things like they'll treat wait staff horribly. These are huge signs that if you see this in somebody's personality, eventually you're going to be the victim of this individual. It's going to happen. It's not a maybe. It's going to happen. When the time is right and the circumstances are right, you will be a victim, just like you see them victimize other individuals. So what do we do? How do we set ourselves up to win here? I think we have to take the blinders off, right? I think that we have to really learn about ourselves the best that we can. And one of the things that I did many years ago, author by the name of Vernon Howard, who's gone now. He passed away quite a while ago. He left an incredible body of work behind. And I'm not sure who it is, but there's a website called anewlife.org. They carry all of Vernon's published materials. And if you go to that website, one of the things that Vernon did was he created all these little booklets, and the booklets were just a wealth of introspective knowledge around, basically human behavior. And there's a bunch of them. I think there's 14. They're in a box set called a treasure box of higher learning, I believe, on the site. And I think each one's like 50 cents a piece or something. I don't know. It's like $14 or something to buy the box. It's not a lot. But what you do when you read this is you go through it, and it gives you basically like the symptoms of personality flaws. So a lot of people will look at it and they'll be like, oh, because they have one like, something like, I don't know, hidden secrets that men have, hidden secrets that women have, how to recognize anger, how to recognize hate, these types of things. A lot of people will look at them and they'll be like, okay, I want to recognize these in other people. And you'll start reading it and you're like, oh shit, I do that. I do that. I do that. I have found that if people will be introspective and honest about their own behavior, it becomes remarkably easy to see it in others once you recognize it in yourself. Why? Because you know the patterns intimately. And the patterns don't change that much, which is fascinating to me, right? In other words, if a person develops a pattern in life that gets them a result and it involves manipulation or poor behavior on their part in some way, they will develop the pattern to get that thing that they need, but they will also develop a pattern that allows it to be kind of cloaked in goodness or niceness or something else that's not 100% real. It has like a false identity to it. But these pamphlets allow you to see through it because the behavior that they exhibit is always the same. It's like they use the same words, the same emotions, the same situations, the same behaviors. And you can actually, these are all the signals of the red flags that you need to look at so that you can believe someone the first time when they show you who they are, and make sure that you build yourself up into a person that's not going to be taken by an individual that really has a more nefarious plan for your life. Okay, I think we just crushed it with this podcast. I mean, one of the biggest problems that people have is they do not know how to recognize people that don't have their best interest in mind. I think we covered it very well. We gave some resources. If you know somebody that is having this problem in their life, please recommend this podcast to them with this episode. Make sure that you subscribe, tell your friends, and we'll see you on the next Successful Mind podcast.